The two brothers who were charged in respect of the alleged incident at Manchester Airport in July last year have each pleaded not guilty to all charges at Liverpool Crown Court yesterday, having first appeared at Liverpool Magistrates Court on the 16th of January this year. Now, obviously, I can't speak with any specificity about this case for obvious reasons, and that's also why you'll find the comments section turned off to avoid you from causing yourself any trouble by making a comment that might land you in trouble, for example, contempt of court and so on. But I can address some of the practicalities and what's actually happened, and a reminder as to what they were charged with and when they'll next appear in court and so on. Now, first of all, there seemed to be a bit of confusion online as to why they were only in court for 9 minutes, and their case has now been adjourned to the 30th of June this year. Well, there's quite a simple explanation for that, which is that yesterday's hearing was just what we call a PTPH, a plea and trial preparation hearing, which is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's a plea and preparation for trial hearing. So the charges are formally put to the defendants and they enter a formal plea. If they fail to enter one, then not guilty will be entered on their behalf, and any kind of ancillary preparation for the trial, for example, arranging witnesses, how long the trial needs to be. There may be some preliminary legal arguments that happen at that hearing, but not always the case. And so this hearing was just 9 minutes long. But that's not to say that the lawyers involved weren't there for a long time, because having done a few of these, you can be in court for half of the day, or even all of the day, waiting for your case to come on for a PTPH, even though you might only actually be heard by the judge for 10 to 15 minutes. Some of them might go on a little bit longer than that, but this one was just 9 minutes, so I read in Manchester Evening News. So just a reminder of what they were actually charged with here. This is the official statement from Greater Manchester Police. They said after much delay that they charged these men with assaulting police officers following the alleged incident at Manchester Airport. The CPS authorised the charges. This was, of course, after not bringing charges against the officers. They authorised to charge Mohammed Ahmad and Mohammed Amaz after the police passed the file of evidence to the CPS in August. The charges are summarised at the bottom of the page here. Mohammed Amaz had 4 charges. Firstly, common assault against a member of the public. Secondly, assault occasioning actual bodily harm, or ABH, against a male police officer. A second of the same against a female police officer. And finally, a subtly different charge, an assault on emergency worker against a separate female police officer. Mohammed Amaz, single count of assault occasioning actual bodily harm against a male police officer. And as I say, I read from Manchester Evening News that the hearing was 9 minutes long and the judge has renewed their bail on the same terms as before, and so they are now free to go until they return back to court in June, where they will go on trial for each of these charges. Now again, without speaking specifically about this case, because I can't, generally speaking, some people may wonder how is it that some defendants plead not guilty to an offence when there appears to be evidence that completely goes against them? Well, there's 2 reasons for that. First of all, it is always the Crown's case to prove, so the prosecution must always prove any criminal prosecution beyond a reasonable doubt, or so that the jury is sure that they are guilty of the offence charged. And secondly, any defendant in any such case, regardless of the strength of the evidence, always has the right to plead not guilty. And so it is a very difficult thing sometimes for law students to get their head around. If there is a complete denial or a possible defence, and that may include, for example, self-defence where any kind of use of force has been used, it is always that defendant's right to raise that defence, and then the burden shifts back to the prosecution. So the prosecution must then disprove their defence to the same criminal standard. But that standard is not applied to any evidence raised to the defendant. A defendant only ever has an evidential burden to raise the defence of self-defence in that example, and then the burden shifts to the prosecution to disprove that defence. But as I say, they always have that right to plead not guilty. And even if they don't enter a formal plea, not guilty will be entered on their behalf. And the very important reason for all of that is that we must try these cases fairly. They must be prosecuted fiercely and fairly, and they must be defended fearlessly and fairly. And only then can we get a fair balance and a fair trial. And each individual, of course, has the right to a fair trial. And in this case, in a Crown Court, of course, that trial will be by jury. But even that's not the end of the matter. There was a statement from the IOPC following the decision by the Crown Prosecution Service not to take any further action against the police officers, They say that their independent investigation into the use of force by the 6 people during the incident continues and is nearing completion. I think this is the most up-to-date one. It's from the 20th of December 2024. They say throughout the investigation, during which 2 officers were interviewed under criminal caution in relation to the alleged assaults during the incident on the 23rd of July, we shared relevant evidence with the CPS as it became available to assist in the swift decision in this case. They say it was important for the events to be carefully investigated, and the IOPC and the GMP investigations are separate and with different remits, but between them they ensure that it's an appropriate level of scrutiny on these matters. If you have any remaining questions about that, there was an extensive fact sheet published by the IOPC specifically about this incident, and it goes through a lot of questions that you may have had. So you can look this up online, it's freely available, and it might address some of the questions you may still have. But I hope you understand, because it's an ongoing case, that is all I can say. I can only comment very generally on how these things work, and that is why this hearing was just 9 minutes long. It's fairly routine, it's over very quickly, and this is a necessary hearing because they enter a plea, make any necessary preparations for trial and so on, and they fix a date or put it in a warned list and so on, so that they know when it's going to take place. But that's really all that happened, and they pleaded not guilty to all of these charges. So I would say let me know your thoughts and comments in the box below, but I've turned it off for obvious reasons. So if you do leave comments and thoughts elsewhere, do so carefully so that you don't get yourself into trouble. But with that, thank you for watching.